Once upon a time, I joined a team working on a specialized customer relationship manager. As users interacted with our public web app, it would track certain actions and make them available for analysis in our CRM. We also kept track of the contacts that our salespeople had with those end users. For historical reasons, both of these kinds of data were represented by the same schmactive record model called user activity. Different kinds of activities were distinguished by an action field which had over a dozen possible values. Looking at the user activity model, I noticed a few constants that consisted entirely of lists of values for the action field. Now, in Ruby, all constants are public unless you go out of your way to hide them. So as soon as I see a constant being defined, I immediately wonder how and where it's getting used. I did a quick grep for each one of these lists, and I found that they were used in two different ways. One way that these lists were being used was to populate select boxes in the web application. These lists also showed up in conditional checks inside various methods in the user activity class. As soon as I saw that, I knew this app was missing a concept. Implicit in both the lists and the conditionals is the idea of some behavior that's common among all the user activity records that share the same value in their action field. Now, because these lists are referenced elsewhere in the app, I can't just get rid of them, but I can change the way they get built. In keeping with the first once in once and only once, I'm going to make that missing concept explicit, and to do that I need to give it a name. After a minute or two of thinking about it, I remember one of my rules about naming things. If I can't think of a good name, I should pick a name that's easy to grep for and change later. Because this is about the action field, I'll just call it action type. I need an object that's going to keep track of attributes that are associated with each possible value in the action field. My tool of choice for this is the Struct class. I'll start it out with two attributes, action and user initiated. I'm going to create a new empty list to hold instances of the new action type class and then populate it with a copy of the user initiated list. I'll use the entries in that list to populate the action field of the action type structs, and I'll set the user initiated field to true for all of them. And now that I've got that list of action types, I'll use it to generate the list of user initiated actions. For now, this is really simple. I'll just map the action method across the entire list. That cleaned up the definition of that user-initiated constant, but the action type definitions look a little funky. This is already starting to look like a table, so I'll use an excellent Vim plugin called Tabularize to wrangle the whitespace for me. I know that I'm going to add more rows to this table, so I'm also going to give myself a commented out row at the bottom that I can use as a template later. Next up, let's look at that list of salesperson activities. I'll start by adding a salesperson attribute to the action type struct, and set it to false for all of the existing action types. Normally when I'm refactoring, I try not to pay attention to what the code I'm looking at means. I just treat it as a bunch of symbols to be moved around according to a set of rules. But I happen to notice that the list of salesperson activities is completely disjoint from the list of user-initiated ones, which means I can copy the next list into this one, add some boilerplate before and after the action, and make sure that the salesperson value is set to true for these new rows. As soon as I do this, though, I break a test. Because the definition of user-initiated is mapping action across the entire list, it now has some extra elements in it. The fix is to filter on the user-initiated attribute before doing the map. With the tests back to green, I can change the definition of the salesperson activities list. Again, I'll filter, then map. This process gets a little repetitive, so I'm going to hand wave past the part where I add the third and fourth columns for exempt and activities with receivers. Here, have a clip of Avdi. I notice that these four constants all follow the same pattern, so I'll dry up some of the boilerplate to make it easier to see what's interesting about each list. This is already starting to communicate in new ways, but there's still room for improvement. For one thing, the syntax highlighting doesn't make it especially easy to distinguish true from false. For our purposes, false isn't a very interesting value, so I'd like to de-emphasize it a bit. I'll swipe a trick from the Ruby koans project and define double underscore as a stand-in for false. Once I've done that, I can do a quick find and replace in the action types list. While I'm paying attention to formatting, it wouldn't hurt matters any to have some headers on those columns. And now it's a lot easier to notice that exempt is highly correlated with user initiated. In fact, except for that made note entry, they're the same list. When I asked what exempt meant, I learned that our salespeople are especially interested in new users. When someone signs up, management wants to make sure that one of our salespeople talks to them right away. So the user model has a new to the site flag, which should remain set until one of our salespeople tries to contact that user. Exempt refers to an action that doesn't clear this flag. Like a lot of humans, I have a hard time with double negation, so I try to get rid of it whenever possible. I'd rather say that some actions clear the new flag, and I can express that by adding another column called clears new flag and making it the inverse of the exempt column. Then, since Struct lets us define methods on the class it generates, I'll override its default implementation of the exempt method, and now I can remove the exempt column. I still have a list of exempt actions, but now the table is expressed in terms of what an action does rather than what it doesn't do. This might seem like an awful lot of work just to change the way 4 arrays get built, and yeah, it sort of is. I don't put this level of effort into every source file I run across. But this was one of the most important models in its application, and as a developer new to the codebase, I'd been in this file several times and had found it confusing to work with. The moment when I've just stopped being confused about a piece of code is a valuable window of opportunity for me to make that code clearer. I get to take my new understanding, as well as my very fresh memories of what information I was missing, and then take a few moments to make that information more obvious. By changing the representation of these lists, I've taken my own questions about what all this means, and I've used them to organize important information about the program into a more compact and accessible form. As developers, we've already got a lot of experience reading tables, so formatting this source file as a table makes it easier for us to spot certain kinds of patterns. For example, now that I'm looking at this, I can see that there are two activities related to text messages. Sent text message is a salesperson action, and received text message is not. But received text message also isn't user initiated, which seems like maybe that's a bug. That mismatch was there all along, but it would have taken a lot more effort to find it before. In a future episode, I'll start using this action type class to do some more traditional refactoring. Until then, happy hacking!
Hi there, I'm Avdi. I'm the creator of Graceful.Dev. If you enjoyed the video you just watched, I want to tell you there are a lot more where that came from. Here on the YouTube channel, we regularly release new freebies from the Graceful.Dev archives, so hit that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss any updates. But our YouTube channel is just a taste. Over at Graceful.Dev, we've got hundreds of videos like this one. From our unparalleled coverage of the Ruby programming language, to testing and refactoring strategies, to practical skills with tools like Git and Docker, we've helped thousands of programmers grow their programming practice and level up their careers. So if you're ready for more, come check us out at graceful.dev to get access to our complete and constantly growing catalog of courses. I hope to see you there.